Today I'm going to share my story with you. And if it's your first time coming here, I promise my videos will not be all this intense, but this is kind of my most important story to share. And that is why I believe in Jesus. So I went from being raised in paganism and witchcraft to becoming a born-again believer in college. I credit Jesus for rescuing me from death. Truly, like, I can't even tell you what kind of pit I was in when I was a teenager and a college student. So we'll start at the beginning, and that is I was raised in a house that did not, I would not call it a Christian household at all. But when I was 13, we moved into a haunted house. He really saw it as this amazing thing, and from the beginning, it kind of bonded us, because as I asked more questions about it, I found that my dad was way more open and sharing of secrets, these secrets that he had. When I was 13, I asked him about what I was seeing in the house, and that's kind of a story for another day. But there were things that happened in the house. I'll put it that way. Asking him about it. And pushing to find out more what he thought it was, and all of these things. He handed me my very first book on witchcraft, and it was this old green bound, gold lettered book. It was like I was being handed something from our history, from this deep family thing. And he gave it to me, and he's like, you need to start here. And he pointed to the book. Witchcraft and pursuing witchcraft became this bond with my dad that I had never had before. Believing in this supernatural world was not that far of a leap for me. So I got deeper and deeper into the witchcraft. I bought books, and of course this was pre-internet days, and so that meant actual books at New Age bookstores. And I accumulated so many books on witchcraft and spells and trying to understand this world. And you really are toying with a very real spiritual world. It just happens to be that spiritual world that you're toying with is an evil world. I saw it as a good thing. I never saw it as this evil thing at all. And why would I? I didn't have any sense of God at all at that time of my life. So I was very much deceived into thinking that I had found this very real and true thing. So I read, and I got deeper into it. It bonded me with my dad. But then things started getting very dark, I would say a few years later. And part of that was my dad got involved in an affair and began using drugs. And my interactions with him were when he was high, and it became a very scary time with him. And then at the same time, things kind of took a darker turn with the witchcraft as well. I started seeing things that were scarier, and I kept trying to fix things with my dad through the witchcraft to bring peace back to my house and all this other stuff, and nothing was working. One horrible night, which, I look back at that night as this like huge marker, I guess, on a bad trip. I mean, I was young. I don't really know what had happened. I believe he was using heroin. He was on a really bad trip, and he took a metal rod and destroyed his bathroom, thinking that things were coming out of the walls. So he was hallucinating, and it was very, very scary. And my mom took my younger sister to be somewhere safe, but left me there with my dad. And he had loaded guns with him because he was afraid of these intruders that he was hallucinating. And I came into the room, and he pointed a shotgun at my head because he didn't know who I was. And it was at that moment that I truly, that relationship with my dad that I had built, I lost it. I didn't trust him. I was scared of him. It was like I didn't even know who he was anymore. And so it really broke down that trust. And I remember going upstairs and wiping that altar that I had created, this witchcraft altar that I had created in my room, wiping it off. And yet it was all I had. It was all I knew to do. So I ended up turning back to it because I had nowhere else to turn. And I knew that there was something to it, or I believed there was something to it. After that happened, it just got so dark and scary. Things at the house, things with my dad. I didn't trust my dad anymore, obviously, and it was very difficult at home, but I also made things terrible at school too, and alienated everyone through something terrible I did, which again, story for another day. But I did, and it was horrible. So school ended up being very hard, and home was very hard, and I wasn't finding the answers I needed from the spirits that I was entreating with the witchcraft, and I ended up really getting to this dark place, and I had a voice tell me, and obviously I know what that voice was now, but at the time I believed it was an answer to what I was seeking, and that was the voice told me to find a new life, to change your life, you have to die. And so I definitely believed that and felt like suicide was the answer, and that I needed to die. So I attempted that and failed. And I think that failure was as hard on me as everything else. That I couldn't even do that right. And I think the one thing that kept me going at that time was somebody, and I don't even remember who, but somebody had said, I'd heard somebody talking about going away to college and how everything will be new at college. And I kind of held on to that, as this little morsel of hope that maybe things will change when I get to college. Things did change. So when I went away to school, I absolutely still considered myself a witch. I believed that it was a core of who I was. It was this, I had this family ancestral history, and I still considered it a legacy, something that I was born to do. So it was very much part of my identity. So I landed at college with not one, but two Christian roommates. And they were like aliens to me. They actually owned Bibles and read them. And I have to tell you, that sounds so simple, right? But I remember thinking it was just so bizarre. I had never met anybody that carried around a Bible. And I did know some Christians in high school for sure. And I definitely had some people witness to me in high school, which, again, great story for another day. But obviously I didn't see them in the evening doing their prayer time. So in college, that's what I saw. I saw them, actually reading the Bible and talking about it. And they even started having an Intervarsity Bible study in my room. Well, to say that I did not quite mesh was an understatement. But bless their hearts, they kept trying with me. I was going off to find parties, and they were like, come to Bible study with us. And I was like, I don't think so. And they kept inviting me to Intervarsity, which, obviously I'm thinking it's a sports club, right? Because varsity, I just assumed it was a sports club. And so it confused me that they were asking me to keep coming to Intervarsity, because I'm like, I don't play sports. I'm a theater kid. I'm a drama kid. That's who I am. I don't do sports. And so it was very, very confusing to me. And then I called home, and the phone was disconnected. And for a week, I had no idea where my family was or what happened. I finally found out that they had lost the house, the house that the only house that had ever been home to me, truly, and that they were gone, and all my stuff was gone, and they finally gave me a new address and said, here's where you're coming home for Thanksgiving. And it was, I don't know, it was like losing a whole nother piece, and I think maybe that's around the same time that they asked me to go to Intervarsity, and I finally said yes. I went to Intervarsity, and growing up, having gone to church occasionally, very occasionally, just spotty attendance, Intervarsity was nothing like I had ever experienced church to be. And it was interesting to me. And even though it's been, 30 years? It's been 30 years, and I still remember the sermon that was preached that night. And the reason is because it completely, it just shifted something in my brain. And it was the Holy Spirit that it was like a light came on, literally. And the sermon was about altars and how, he talked about 2 altars. He talked about the altar of Baal and Elijah calling down fire and all of that, and then the Abraham altar with Isaac, and what altars in the Bible actually look like. And as coming from my background in witchcraft and paganism, I understood altars, but it was not what I had been taught all those years. And I suddenly realized that, oh my gosh, this is the truth that I've been looking for all these years. And because at the core, I really did want to know the truth. And I thought I had found it. And suddenly that light came on, and I realized that I had been looking in the wrong direction, and that truth was finally illuminated. And so that night, that very night, I didn't tell a soul, I didn't talk to anybody, but it impacted me so greatly that I went out and I kneeled in this big open space. It was like this quad area on campus, and I kneeled right there and I said, if you really love me and all of that is really true, then I'll be yours. And that's exactly what I said. I didn't know the sinner's prayer, I didn't know any of those kinds of things, but that's what I said. And it basically started everything. I wish I could say that, everything, snap, was all better, but it wasn't. It really, honestly, I did become a Christian that night, truly, but that actually began a brand new journey that was very, very difficult, but also life transforming. And over those years of college, I learned what it was to really follow Christ. I had no support from my family. My mom and dad were actually pretty angry about my choices, and my mom said terrible things to me, and my dad threatened to disown me. And it was really bad. It got to the point that I couldn't go home anymore. He didn't disown me, but I couldn't go home. So I ended up living away at school for the rest of the time, and I got involved in a home fellowship group that I credit with getting me on the right path and truly discipling me. Because discipleship really, I don't know, it's like this word people throw around, but truly what it is, it's learning to walk it out and be transformed. Jesus does take us as we are. Here we are, we come in messy and broken, but we are not supposed to stay messy and broken. And I was very messy, and I was very, very broken. But that is not how we're supposed to stay. God wants to heal us and transform us. He doesn't want to just come in and redecorate, make things, we're prettier on the outside. Oh, we got a new shirt. We've got this and that. No, he doesn't want to redecorate. He wants to transform. It's a complete remodel. He wants to come in and change everything, but thankfully he doesn't do it all at one time. He does it as we can handle it and as we move towards him. And that fellowship group really, really got me on that journey of what that looks like. And that journey continues. 30 years later, that is what still happens. God is still transforming me, still healing, still bringing light and life into my world every day. That's my story. That's the shorter version. I guess it's still pretty long, but that's the short version. There's a lot more to it, but obviously those are the pieces that are most important, and that is a story I continue to talk about. It's my heart passion. So hopefully this has encouraged you and given you some hope, and I hope that you'll continue to watch my videos and like and subscribe and all those fun things that are super, super important. So please do that, and share the video if there's somebody that needs that encouragement to say, what, God can transform lives. I mean, that's what he's in the business of doing, and he can take anything, no matter how dark your world was or is. He's the answer. Every time, he's the answer.